and they said, we'll fund them as far up as we got money to cover, and that way we can cover a lot more people. And I think the first year it fell somewhere, disc surgery, I think fell one side or the other of the line. It lasted 2 weeks. No sooner did they announce it than the interest groups descended on the state capitol, and there was marches, and the disabilities community showed up, and they were arguing about something to do with rehabilitation therapy and the right to life. People came and said no, low birth rate babies weren't high enough on the list, and then the AIDS activists showed up and said AIDS drugs needed to be moved. Within 2 weeks, they had rewritten the entire list. And they'd moved everything around, and it no longer had any basis in scientific rationality. It was all based on who the biggest lobbyist was. And if you move this comparative effectiveness research to the federal level and have the federal government doing this, I'm just saying, you're just creating, the Lobbyist Full Employment Act when you do this. So my advice is to you is to not reject comparative research, effectiveness research out of hand, not to ban it, not to prohibit insurance companies from using it, not to get involved in mandating that it be used, or even worse, you have states, Connecticut, the Attorney General there, or maybe the new senator, actually got involved in prohibiting a doctor's group from deciding it would issue guidelines for how to treat certain diseases because the disease constituency objected in that case. You don't get involved in it. Let the private sector do what it does best. Provide the information, set guidelines, and then let the market decide what works and doesn't work. Thank you all very much.
Michael, thank you very much. We appreciate those comments. And I wanted to encourage everybody to stay through this session because I think we might have an interesting and lively discussion. One of your concerns, one of my concerns, I believe, is who is making the decision in comparative effectiveness. I think that is at the core of a lot of people's concerns is who is making the decision. Is it ever proper for a person, a group, an entity to have a say in what healthcare procedures are actually performed? And when taxpayers have a vested interest because taxpayers are asked to foot the bill, is that a proper time to open up the doors and have the public sector have the government take a look at this or not? Those are some questions out there. So with that, I'd like to introduce now Bob Goldberg, who is the co-founder and vice president of the Center for Medicine and the Public Interest. Bob hosts the popular and sometimes controversial blog on the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare. The blog is drugwonks, WONKS.com. Prior to founding the Center for Medicine and Public Interest, he was the director of Manhattan Institute Center for Medical Progress and was the chairman of the 21st Century FDA Task Force that examined the impact of the FDA's Critical Path Initiative on drug development and personalized medicine. Bob has written for the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, the National Review, the Chicago Tribune, Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Sun, and he writes regularly for the American Spectator, the New York Post, and the Weekly Standard. With that, Bob, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to hearing your remarks as well.
Thanks. I'll just on because I'll just sit here. I'm too tired to. And I'll tell you why I'm. Actually, Julie, could you hold the book up? I have a book coming out December 14th, and I'm getting some feedback from. Oh, all right. That's okay. I have all these materials here. Maybe it's the iPad. It could be. I have a book coming out December 17th called Tabloid Medicine, How the Internet is Being Used to Hijack Medical Science for Fear and Profit. It's sort of a how-to guide on how to use the Internet to get the right medical information to individualize care as opposed to getting the one-size-fits-all solution shoved down your throat by government trial attorneys and quacks, which is something that we've been talking about. And these two people are not quacks; they are people to be listened to. And I agree with both of their excellent presentations. If I'm a little discombobulated, and tired, it's because I had a very exhaustive physical exam. I went to my primary care doctor before I came here And Christina knows that I was supposed to speak here 2 years ago, and I had a accident. I was pinned up against 2 cars at a car wash. And so I go back every year for an exam to see if my sciatic is okay. So this time around, did the exam, did the x-ray, and then my doctor said, take off your clothes. And which was, I said, take off my clothes is very unusual. Said, listen, I'm your physician. Trust me, take off your clothes. And I did. So now go over to the window and stick out your tongue. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, so I did. I said, why, is this part of the exam? He says, oh, but Nancy Pelosi's office, and I hate her. She passed national health care. So healthcare is a very controversial subject, as you imagine, and comparative effectiveness is one of the difficult subjects. Why is comparative effectiveness in the healthcare bill? Because it's a panacea for controlling healthcare costs, and as Twyla said, it's nothing new. People have trotted out comparative effectiveness as a tool for the last 40 years. It's worked wonderfully in England, of course, where they've had it for 30 years, and their healthcare spending is increasing faster than ours. There was an article, I went back last night and looked at some of the healthcare literature written back in the 1980s and 1970s, and there was an article, in some of the literature in health affairs, and here's one quote. We are told that if we don't contain spiraling healthcare costs, in the next 20 years, healthcare spending will consume our entire GDP. Well, that was written in 1980, and that was the preamble to an article about why we needed comparative effectiveness. Actually, everything you need to know about comparative effectiveness was written by Lewis Thomas in an article called The Technology of Medicine, which was written in an article, Lies of the Cell. It's very hard to get on the internet after this session. If you give me your email address, I will make a Xerox copy and send it to you. Here's what Dr. Thomas said at the time. He said, when, as is bound to happen sooner or later, the analysts get around to the technology of medicine itself, they will have to face the problem of measuring the relative cost and effectiveness of all the things that are done in the management of disease. They make their living at this kind of thing, and I wish them well, but I imagine they will have a bewildering time. For one thing, our methods of managing our disease are constantly changing, partly under the influence of new bits of information brought in from all corners of science. At the same time, a great many things are done that are not so closely related to science, some not related at all. Along those lines, one point that neither of our other excellent speakers made is that science is ideas, and ideas is knowledge, and knowledge is accelerating, duplicating so rapidly that you can't keep up. Many of the definitive studies of, for example, Michael talked about how to deal with prostate cancer. Well, the 3 options, watchful waiting, active surveillance, surgery, or chemotherapy, that's yesterday. That's so yesterday. Now, we use a variety of technologies to determine how fast your tumor's growing based upon blood tests, saliva tests, circulating tumors, imaging. So there's a personalized approach to the treatment, staging, prevention, et cetera. And just to give you an example, Paul Romer, oh shoot, this shut down, but I'll get back to it. And this is something from a book called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, which I recommend to all of you. He says the beautiful feature of our information systems, and this applies to health information as well, are far vaster than our physical systems, which could be an analogy for comparative effectiveness. The combinatorial vastness of the universe of possible ideas dwarfs the puny universe of physical things, which I would use as a metaphor for comparative effectiveness research and the handful of bureaucrats that would tell us what are the right ways to treat things, which, by the way, will go into the quality definition that will go